Nathan.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good
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 tidings. I don't know. All of the things.
good century, good I don't know.
It's a good day.
Right? Yeah, it is a good day. It is.
I'm really enjoying our conversation, so I'm glad you're back here for round three. I'm really having a good time talking to you about just all the things.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for inviting me back. I'm really enjoying
Yeah,
this as well.
you bet. Tomorrow is the big eclipse, the big new moon eclipse. Do you follow that stuff? Do you care about it? Where are you at on astrology?
Well, okay, I definitely care about it, but so here's I guess in my world, like with all things like astrology, actually everything, all of this, I always kind of try to filter out the noise because there is a lot of I mean, any
Yeah,
any event that has a lot of attention to it, there's also that comes with it a lot of the I don't know the human experience noise that kind of gets activated around it too.
right, right.
And
So
like,
are you
yeah,
of the belief that something is going to happen tomorrow? Something spectacular or whatever? Or it's just a regular
well,
old
yeah. I
eclipse?
mean, something super spectacular is going to happen. I mean, we're going to have an eclipse of the sun.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
and that's huge. I
I
do,
agree with you. I agree
I
with you. Do you think
do.
there's anything spiritual or supernatural to it though?
And here's the thing: like, I would say yes, but I would say it's not for me. It doesn't feel like yeah, I do believe in the shift energy that there's going to be that because I do feel like all these energies activate, you know, the shifts
Yeah,
definitely, and
yeah.
especially something that's a significant event like this. There's a shift associated with it for sure, but I mean, it's not like I don't think like all of a sudden on April 9th we're all gonna all of a sudden have a massively different like the world's gonna look massively different and everything is gonna have a major change.
Right. That's sort of what I'm insinuating, like a paradigm shift or something crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I guess I do like this kind of leads me to something I kind of observe a lot is the new earth concept and
Right.
I've been questioning the new earth concept quite a bit recently. It's one of my questions that I contemplate a lot and that
Yeah.
seems to be one of the common themes around the solar eclipse is
Right.
that this is what's ushering in the new earth or
Right.
think concepts like that or like there's all the similar things of like just there's all these crazy energies that we now have to integrate and just feel the suffering of all the energies that we're now integrating because of the major shift and all that. And I do feel like I don't like to read a lot of that because I don't like programs for me what my experience is going to be. And I don't like that. I prefer to, and when I read some of it just to kind of practice my discernment around things
Right. Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah.
because it's a constant. I mean, this discernment stuff, it's a constant practice. Just like all of
Well,
it.
and we have plenty of opportunities to practice with, the news and, just propaganda and who's telling the truth. And it's very confusing nowadays, I feel like. And so I think we're
Yeah.
being asked more and more to rely on that intuition.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
true, right?
yeah, I, I also think there's something special to the eclipse. I mean, the ancients all sort of, it was a big deal to them. So I think there is something special and spiritual or whatever about it. But I just feel like every time people in the spiritual community will go on like, okay, the 8-8 portal is coming, or there's another full moon. This is going to be a big one, and then nothing ever seems to happen. Nothing ever seems like there's this big buildup. It's sort of like Y2K, like everybody's all anticipating this big thing, and then nothing ever happens.
Right, right. So
So I'm kind of like, okay, cool. There's going to be an eclipse. It's special. It's awesome. But I've been let down too many times to just, I'm not. I get all excited and I get caught in the wave of like, okay, this is it, guys. This is it. And then like, what does that mean? What are we shifting to new Earth? Is it what? What is coming exactly? So I sort of question that as well. What are your thoughts on New Earth from what you've looked into? What does New Earth sort of look like to you, or feel like to you, or what does it
Well,
mean?
it's kind of fascinating. I did a little bit of browsing on that, and there's multiple different versions of New Earth, and just there's like different groups that call themselves New Earth groups. It's kind of fascinating, and
Yeah,
they all have a different version of what New Earth is. So I
right.
just kind of feel like New Earth is just another path of seeking for different people, whatever groups they choose to resonate with or what they pay attention to help them shift on their path, what they're trying to step towards, I guess. And I don't think there is this massive new earth that where everything, oh boy, I guess I don't think like there's going to be this. To me, it feels similar to like the heaven concept, where like
Yeah,
we pass, and then we were forgiven of all of our crappiness from this earth living, and then we get to live in this magical garden of bliss, I guess I
yeah.
would say. And
So do you? So you would kind of call it a heavenly realm? Maybe, is that what I'm hearing?
I guess that's the concept that seems to be pitched that I have kind of seen, but I don't really resonate with that. That there's
Well,
going
what
to
do you
be.
resonate with?
I just think that I don't think there is a new Earth. I'm going to be real.
Okay,
I don't
okay,
think
fair
there's a new
enough.
Earth. I think there's. I always keep going back to this. I do resonate with the quantum physics concepts. I mean, there's multiple timelines of multiple versions of this space that is the now happening all in tandem.
Sure.
And I definitely think there's different spaces of this living that we could shift into that would maybe not be so in our version of the chaos that we live in. That would be more peaceful,
Right.
perhaps.
Right.
Um, but I don't think it means it's going to be all bliss, because I mean that I still feel like there's always this balance. I think there might be a more balanced place, a balanced version of a timeline to exist in. That maybe
Hmm.
if I keep stepping towards my own life balance, that's the timeline I will shift to.
Yeah. So
But
you don't. So you're not in the. So you're not of the belief that there's going to be some sort of an event, like a lot of people think that there's going to be some sort of an event that will sort of change everything, and the veil is dropped, and hello new earth, or hello new. What about just not calling it new earth and just calling it a different dimension? Maybe, is
hmm,
that something that resonates with you a
hmm,
little better, maybe, or what?
that's interesting. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah,
Yeah, me too. That's why I say it. I'm
I
like,
feel
okay,
that
new
more.
earth, it feels kind of worn out and I don't really resonate with it, but shifting into another dimension somehow, some way is like, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I'm on board with that.
Yeah,
Like once we die, I think once our physical bodies die, I think our consciousness or soul or whatever goes to another dimension. You can call it a heavenly realm or the fifth dimension or whatever, whatever. But I think that's kind of what I'm thinking of. New earth is just like, from what I'm told from people, I listen to all of these people who've had near death experiences. I'm really fascinated by it, and just kind of looking at the commonality.
mm, yeah, sure, more.
Sorry, can you hear me? I
I
popped out
can
there for a second.
I can hear you now.
I got an Amber Alert on my phone, and it just sort of locked everything up. So,
Ooh.
1 second, let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I think that was the problem.
I'm not sure that'll stop an Amber Alert, but
Yeah, but it'll stop
good luck.
everybody else who's trying to get a hold of me. I'm real popular. You have to understand that. No, no. What was I talking about? I got distracted with that Amber Alert.
Oh my gosh! And now
Shifting into New Earth.
yeah,
Shifting into
we go.
New Earth. I feel like. Uh, what was I getting at there? That I question whether or not there's going to be like a big event, because I kind of have this feeling in my gut, that something is coming, whether it's a solar event or the power grid going down or a cataclysm or disclosure, aliens on the White House lawn type of a thing. Do you get that sense as well, or not, that something is coming, or on the edge of something?
I do, but I'll be honest. Like, I also question like if it always feels that way through these different versions of human experience. I mean, that chaos element, or where there's going to be some massive event that changes everything. It feels like there's been so many different periods of history where that same vibe has been there.
Yeah. So are you saying like people have been talking about doomsday for thousands of years? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Because I think that too. There's always been people saying the end is nigh, the end is nigh, the prophecies have foretold we're in the end times, and they've been saying that for thousands of years.
and I think even there's definitely massive events that occur, what I would say feel massive to us in this funny little container we live in.
Yeah.
But even after the massive events, the shift still has a process. There's still a process for change to happen as a result of those massive events.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's rarely, except for these cataclysms like the Great Flood or whatever, I feel like society just evolves very slowly. So I feel like it's just this slow shift, this gradual change. So are we going into a new chapter or a new cosmic cycle or whatever? Yeah, maybe, but I don't think it happens overnight. I don't think it happens with the snap of a finger or one event will trigger it or something like Ragnarok or something. I don't know, but I, I don't think it's going to be a world changing thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like looking back and even our short, brief period of history that in the last 100 years, I mean, things that you would think would have been a massive shift, like wouldn't have. I mean, when I think back, like wouldn't World War II have been a massive change? And wouldn't you think maybe that would? I guess in may maybe in my own judgment or look at it, like wouldn't you
Yeah,
think the events of World War II would have really just ushered in a whole new period of love and understanding between people, knowing like what
yeah,
happened
I
during
hear you.
like,
And
but it
maybe that's what sort of led itself into the peace and love movement in the 60s, that it sort of took 20 years to kind of get there maybe, but
Mm.
I, then what came to my mind as soon as you said World War II was that I think there was a change in terms of UFO sightings. I mean, just to sort of shift gears a
Hmm.
little bit, I've been
Yeah, that's
listening to a
interesting.
lot of podcasts about UFOs, and there's just a general consensus that the number of sightings sort of went through the roof once humans started discovering, nuclear bombs and technologies of that sort. And so I think that maybe that was a bit of a game changer where things started to shift, where we could start to interact and at least see these beings, whatever they are. They started interacting with us more once the nuclear technology turned on.
Hmm. It's also
You ever
fun.
looked in? Have you ever looked in any of that stuff or no?
Oh yeah, I've watched a number of I like the UFO shows for sure. And
Yeah, it's just really interesting because I feel like humanity has been talking about these, they often call them divine beings from the sky since antiquity. I mean, the earliest known writings come from Mesopotamia, and they're even talking about these beings coming from the sky, and they talk about it in the Bible, and it's been kind of um, discussed for thousands of years, really. And so I just find it very interesting that once, the analogy is that like we're the monkeys, these primitive beings, and we discovered a technology that perhaps we shouldn't be playing around with, and those higher beings that are perhaps watching us and guiding us and leading us are sort of taking the weaponry out of our hands. There's been all these sightings of these alien, allegedly alien crafts or whatever, dismantling these nuclear weapons and nuclear missiles and stuff that are that are fired off. They just sort of go bleep 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 and delete the nuclear technology. So there's something weird going on there.
yeah, I hear that. I feel that. But like, and that's interesting around the whole higher being concepts too, for me.
Yeah.
Around does that mean there are these higher, like quote unquote higher beings? Because we kind of touched on the higher lower algorithm a bit last time.
Right. And what does that mean? It's just a
What is that?
perspective. And is
Yeah.
there higher and lower? It's all a spectrum. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or maybe
So I
just a being that has knowledge we haven't gained in the space we live in that uses their knowledge to help protect us. I don't know. That's an interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even like saying, because I often think of our conversation that we just had about higher and lower, and I wonder
Yeah.
if they're just maybe more advanced than us, is all that it is. They're just further along on the path than we are by, millions of years theoretically, and evolutionarily and mentally and spiritually and all the things. Um, and so there's a theory that they are future versions of humans, and that they have somehow traveled back to these times and are sort of watching over us, and that there's sort of a a Star Trek Prime Directive where they're not really they sort of don't interact with humans. They sort of let us just sort of do our own thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they're divine beings and they're actually like gods, or if the early interactions they had with humans thousands of years ago, maybe if just their technologies were so advanced that we sort of perceived them as gods.
Hmm.
You
I
know?
keep also like my mind keeps jumping to this whole like, well, like these conversations sometimes have this silly factor to me when I keep also going back to, in my mind around the well, what's really real? Well,
Yeah, right.
like what is the space that we're in? Is it how real is it? And
Is it just a
it
part of
is,
the simulation or just a part of the matrix or whatever? Maybe it doesn't.
yeah.
Maybe it's not even real.
Like I started listening to the Kabbalion, by the way. Like I was
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I haven't gotten all the way through it yet. I'm just listening to a YouTube video of it.
It's heavy. It's heavy stuff, but
And
it's so dense and rich.
honestly, that's kind of why my mind I keep getting to this. Well, what is it's all these silly concepts around aliens or not aliens and new Earth and not I don't know old Earth, whatever that would be.
Right.
Just kind of like have a different
Why do you? Why I'm
feeling.
curious why you call it. I'm curious why you call it a silly concept. Um, do you think that's part of the programming that to talk about aliens is sort of like fringe and crazy and silly, or um, I mean, is that what you think about it? Do you think it's kind of? Do you feel awkward talking about it because it seems sort of like that can't be real? Come on.
I think all is exactly just is because we speak it and we say it and we express it. And
Hmm.
all is I have this feeling, I have this general feeling that everything that we is as it is, what it is, as we speak it and live it and experience it, because that's what we're living, speaking, experiencing, if that makes any sense. Like guess I don't feel so it's this weird like I've been actually contemplating this a bit about am I too like I'm looking for the opposite of attachment, detachment,
Hmm.
a lot of times as part of the what I meditate on a lot, but am I getting too detached? Like, am I to this point? I do question this a lot. Like, am I to the point where
Uh-huh.
I'm so detached from the experience of being a human in this life that like I'm not letting it be the real that it could be or that it would be helpful for me to live it as.
I hear you.
It's
I
honestly
I
just a
relate to you.
question. I have no answers. I'm just all questions. So
Yeah, well, join the club. I mean, I totally resonate with what you're saying because I have felt that before, and uh, I often feel that way, where it's like I have gotten myself to this place of detachment because a lot of the Eastern philosophies and religions talk about just releasing and detaching from the material world. So I've really been doing that successfully, and it creates more peace and harmony in my life, etc. But it's very discombobulating, detaching from everything, because then you start to lose your connection with humanity. Like I do that as well, where I'm like, okay, I mean, I genuinely think there's a very high probability that we're living in a simulation. So I try to frame everything around that, and that's sort of my base foundation. And so, um, I'm constantly I constantly have to remind myself that this is just part of the human experience and not to detach from it, and to try to um,
yeah.
it's hard to not be robotic and cold when you detach from everything in the world.
Like I was yeah, like I was considering I was literally thinking about the phrase that's often used, what really matters, like the question, what really matters? And I'm
Right,
fascinated by the word matter in that context of the sentence because matter is another word for physical substance, right?
right.
It's literally that which occupies space and has mass. I mean,
Which we're told by science doesn't actually exist, which adds just another layer of illusion to it, and maybe it's just in our mind, type of a thing.
right. But if we perceive it as if you perceive that it matters, it matters. I guess I
Hmm.
keep going to the perception concept too. Like it really, the experience. I don't. Yeah, and it's. I guess to go to the cold factor, the detachment. I also feel like I'm bouncing. My brain is bouncing in so many directions. I hardly know what to say, man. but but yeah, because I had to make a choice. I was reflecting on this subject of the what really matters and the detachment subject around. I mean, there's a point in my life I had to make a choice.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go too in the detail, too in the weeds around it, but where I had to make a choice to step away from an experience that was really becoming destructive. Like it wasn't because it was destructive for me for a long time, to be honest, like over 10 years. But and I needed to step away from it, and it involved a relationship with another person that I just had to step away.
Yeah.
And part of my attachment was I didn't want to step away. I deeply cared, love my, this relationship in my life and the person in my life, but
Yeah.
I just needed to get away. So I actually consciously remember thinking to myself, I'm going to have to go cold. It sucks, but I have to go cold to get away. And it was fascinating to me that I had to choose consciously have that choice of, okay, I'm going to go cold slash emotionless in order to help myself heal and step away and get the boundaries I need.
Yeah, which is super healthy but challenging, right? What does go cold mean for you specifically? Like, did you just not think about them, or like, what does that mean going cold?
Meaning, like, I had to make choices that were completely detached from concern for their well being. I had to solely
Oh,
focus on the well being of myself and actually my son as well. But yeah,
yeah,
I had to purely focus on that. And then my empathetic self, my compassionate, empathetic self, I almost had to either turn the volume, maybe the volume down or turn it off for this person that
yeah,
I just had to step back from.
yeah. It's so hard to draw those lines sometimes, especially with, like family members or people that are close to us, because you always want to be a good person. You don't want to be an asshole. And
Right.
so there's always that questioning, or that voice in my head, just, checking in, saying, like, am I crossing a line here? Am I being a dickhead here? Am I, doing the loving action is what I'm always trying to do. And when because I went through a period as well where I had to disconnect from several people in my life, and that was a really challenging time emotionally,
Yeah.
because they were close to me and they were part. I felt like they were part of me in some way, and so it's hard. It's super hard, but the universe had to remind me that it wasn't always about loving actions towards other people. I also have to remember about loving actions towards myself, and sometimes drawing those boundaries for myself is the most loving action for me at that time.
Yeah. Amen.
You know.
Amen to that.
But it's super difficult because we're taught not to be selfish. We're sort of programmed not to think about ourselves, to only think about others. And so for me, it was sort of part of that deprogramming of saying, like, no, you know what? I'm loving myself here by drawing these boundaries with these people. Because early on, one of the analogies in my spiritual journey was the oxygen mask analogy of when you're on an airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on yourself first before you start helping other people. Otherwise, you're going to pass out and be worthless to everybody. So I think of
Amen.
that often in terms of, like, I've got to give my own self love. I've got to build my own self up. I have to look out for myself first. And
Right.
then once I'm at a good place, then I can help others, my children or people in my life or society or whatever, whatever.
I love that you use the oxygen mask because during the period that I'd made the choice to quote unquote go cold, that message kept on coming to the forefront of my life. And
Mm,
multiple people use that same analogy. Well, if the airplane's crashing and you
yeah.
put that oxygen, just say you're sitting next to a loved one, that airplane's crashing to the ground, and those oxygen masks fall. Do you first put the oxygen mask on the person next to you or yourself? That question came up multiple times, and
Right.
but it was also it's interesting to me the attachments I had to what was cold and loving, or what was cold and not loving, or is it not loving to be cold, or is it can you be cold and loving, or what the definition of loving is, and the empathy
And
of
what the Yeah, yeah, and what sorry to interrupt you, and what the definition of cold is. Like, they're all just perceptions, you know?
right. Like I literally, and I noticed my attachment to because the funny part that I'm going to also put in here is that say here is that when I was deciding to go cold in the context of this situation where I just had to, okay, I'm, for my boundaries' sake and for my own health, I need to go cold. As I described it, I also use this phrase, and this is going to be a funny one to say out loud, but I used to say I'm gotta go Republican. And that's because of my perception. But what I learned is that was because of my perception of what I believed it was to be Republican and Democrat, because I was still in that space. Now I don't really polarize myself like that at all anymore. But
Hmm.
I did have this belief that, like, well, there's more, like, there's this broad stroke, like, belief that Democrats or like liberals like to believe they're the compassionate ones. And there's a broad stroke belief that, if you grow up in that space, that Republicans are cold hearted, or that, and that, so I had to like
Right.
relearn my politics. Like, I had to totally step away from, well, that's funny that I have these preconceived judgments around what it means to be Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. And I mean, the reality is, like, some people in my life that are extremely, like, I came from a very liberal type background, but some people in my
Okay.
life that I've never really, I've had friends on all sides of the aisles, and I've never believed in the whole polarity of it socially. And like, some friends in my life who really helped me get through the period of quote unquote going cold showed so much love to me that
Yeah.
they're oftentimes were the more conservative side of the world space that I live in,
Hmm.
like, really displayed so much love in this period of my life that I had to, you know,
To your surprise, was it to your surprise?
yes, well,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily to my surprise. It was more, my surprise was more holy crap, I had these judgments that I had, that I thought I was Mr. I totally love everybody. And now, to my biggest surprise, was I'm
Surprise.
categorizing people the way I prefer not to be categorized.
No, I exactly. It's so hard. It's kind of ingrained in us to do that, and it's so
Right?
hard to deprogram that. That mind frame. I'm the same way. I mean, I often have a lot of judgments towards. For a while, I had a lot of judgments towards Christians and Christianity because it's a lot of
Yeah,
people in
me
my
too.
family are Christians, and they're very. I kind of had a negative view of them, but then I had the same a similar situation happened to me where I'd be talking to a Christian and they would start talking about like how they believe in reincarnation, and I was like, whoa, wait, what? Like they would surprise me because I had my preconceived notions about what Christians believe and don't believe, and they're all the same, and but of course they're not. And of course it's a nuanced thing, just like politics. Like not everybody falls neatly and nicely into this camp or that camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super eye-opening and good. I think to see people who fall outside of our expectations, because then you start thinking about perspective, and it kind of opens up your own. I'll speak for myself, for my own perspectives. I could start seeing things differently. Like, oh, okay, I can kind of see where they're coming from now, rather than saying they're wrong, or uh, it's hard. It's hard not to point the finger. I'd like
Yeah.
to talk
Well, I
about.
feel
I'd
like in
like
this
to talk about.
programming, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You.
I was saying, I feel like in this programming that the constant, I'll say, the programming that we see on all of our feeds that we look at, or online, or I'm going to say radio, but radio feels ancient to even say right now.
Yes, it does.
But um, that these categories get, there's these preset defined parameters that if you call yourself this, then these are the definition. This is what that is defined as.
Mhm.
It's really put in our face a lot.
Mhm.
And the reality is, of course, none of us fit into any of those definitions of those categories at all. If you talk to have individual conversations with anybody that defines himself as, or labels himself as this or that, the deeper conversations always reveal there's really the limits that we perceive within those descriptions of, I guess, the labels we use definitely are not that well defined, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And
And I
what
love that.
is
I love that
it,
experience constantly.
m- me too, me too. My definition of right wing is different than your definition of right wing.
Right.
For example,
Oh,
and
yeah.
um so I want to I'm curious about your politics. So you grew up in a liberal household. Would you consider yourself more conservative today, or did you go through a conservative period,
Oh, that's interesting.
or
So,
what?
well, I would say I grew up in, I guess I did grow up in a liberal household, in that I resonate, because actually, grew up in a household where my father was more conservative and my mother was more liberal. So I actually grew
Okay.
up in a household that, and that was a lot more common, I would say, back when I was a kid. I mean, there was more, like it seems like maybe this is wrong to say. I don't. Maybe it's not true in the reality of the experience of, but households where there was between the matriarch and the patriarch of the household didn't always have the same political beliefs, and that would seem more common to me when I grew up. I don't know. Is that true?
Sure.
I don't know. But
Well, it's true. It's true for you. Whatever.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, right. So yeah, but I resonated more with my mother in that context of but
Mm.
also because I had some issues with my father, maybe that I was stepping away from,
Mm. Did
and
you guys talk about politics very often in the house when you were growing up, or not?
not really very often. Well, I guess my mother, and yes, I guess it was my parents more when my parents got divorced, and I lived with my mother more, and my mother talked about it a lot, to be honest.
Okay.
And I didn't really like to define myself as I never really liked this whole two-party system stuff. And honestly, the first time I could vote, I'd voted third party, and then I got, like yelled at by my I got an
What
angry
a
response
waste.
from my
Yeah.
family, like you totally threw away your vote. What a waste,
Right.
blah blah blah. And I'm like, well,
Right.
I don't
Right.
believe the two-party system is good for anybody. In fact, I don't think the founders of this country even believed the two-party system was healthy and tried to prevent that, but we ended up there anyway. And so yeah, politically, I guess, and now I guess I've always had this also element where there's this common divide where there's this concept where people tend to believe conservative mindsets more in the rural areas and liberal mindsets are more often in the city areas.
Right.
And I grew up in a city space, but I've always been drawn to working for like smaller companies in the rural areas and as a technician. Like I just loved the small business mindset with smaller companies that tend to be run from rural areas. So I tended to blend, like I've always been a bridge walker. I've always been a in between space person.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Sure.
I've actually in those life spaces I had a lot of love for people that had all these different beliefs, but I still resonated mostly with what I felt were the more compassionate values. That's how I attached myself to it because it felt more compassionate to me.
Yeah.
But I do feel this overall energy of like I've let go of my versions of what compassion is in that context and opened up to I just don't really resonate with either of it at this point. I think it's meant to divide. There's the way they're put out there are meant to divide us as people and divide us as energies and divide us in every way possible. And
Agreed. Agreed.
so I don't really have any I'm not drawn to any political
Are there
any
any topics that get you real fired up, or that you have a strong opinion about, or no?
that's a good question. Do I have any topics?
Like, is there a conversation that a person on the opposite end of the spectrum yelling at you about it would it get you a little fired up? Is there anything that you're sort of?
The weird thing is no, I would say no. I'm kind of more of a listener always, and
Mm,
I'm definitely interested in listening.
yeah.
What yeah gets me fired. It's weird. I feel kind of weird saying that 'cause there's nothing that really seems to get me fired.
Well, I suppose it's a real peaceful place to be. So, like, cheers to you. It's. I feel like a lot of people are not in that position, whether or not you did it intentionally. I think it's great that.
Like this
Uh,
concept that if we have 4 more years of this or 4 more years of that, it's the end. It's over.
right.
Like if you vote for this or you vote for that, it's just over. I'm like, I don't
Right.
believe that bullshit. I think we can go through another 4 years of whatever happens. And that's such a minuscule part of this whole experience we have on this life space that it's that four
Hmm.
years is not gonna make or break anything in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that as well. Do you vote?
I always have, and I'm not even sure this next election. This is the first election coming up that I'm really like, I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
going
it's a
to.
real personal question often. But uh,
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't
I
think about
not
it.
for me, not for me. That's why I ask it. But yeah, the last presidential election was the first one that I didn't vote, and I felt really good about it, and I still feel good about it. Where I just feel like I don't. I don't want to contribute to this. It feels to me just very broken and corrupt, and nobody sort of ever does anything about it. And it's just, I'm tired of playing the game. So I don't want to play the game anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to feel more drawn to if I do vote, I'll probably throw my vote away and vote, for
Bobby.
just a different. I mean, I might even write in the name of some energy person that person that I might just shoot in. Just maybe someone that would help. Because honestly, the reality is the people that would be best as our leaders are the people who just would never want to run to be a leader. You know,
Absolutely. I
so
totally agree with that as well. I don't trust
I don't
their
know.
intentions. I don't trust anybody who wants to be in power like that. It's like, oh, I don't know. I
But I
don't
do
know.
feel the need for like shifts and change, and I just if there really was a candidate or someone that felt like that had that energy of could I don't know just even if just mix it up from honestly the old white guy algorithm.
Uh
No
huh.
offense, and I don't say that as a it's just honestly I'm tired of it. I'll be real. I'm tired of all
But I
the
don't. I also don't want to vote for a woman or a minority just for simply the fact that they're a woman or they're a minority. I want to, I want a candidate that I stand behind. And if it's a white man, like I'll roll my eyes, like, okay, give me a break with this. But
right. I hear
um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to vote for somebody who's different just simply for the fact that they're different, because I don't think that's good either. But I also think, like, I honestly think that whoever gets voted into office or into the Senate, I think that whatever their intentions are, even if they're good intentions and they want to change things and get in there and roll up their sleeves, I think that once you get into the machine, it just takes you over.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that.
Do you fundamentally trust the government?
uh, fundamentally trust the government.
Uh huh. At
I
the end of the day, do you trust what they're doing or saying?
not really no. But I don't
Yeah,
like to say that from the because I just what I hesitate because I'm not scared of it. I don't fear the
sure,
government.
sure.
I'm not one who thinks we need to shut the government down completely and just go all. I mean, it's helpful. I mean, it's helpful for us to live. We do live in this space. While time is an illusion, we do still need this. We are in these physical human spaces where we need to have containers. We just that's the fact. It's uh, matter is a thing. you know, what matters is matter
Well, sure, sure.
in some ways,
Um,
I guess.
but do you
I'm not sure if I'm answering your
because
question.
I fundamentally I don't trust the government either. I just sort of have always had a I'm not good with authority of any kind, including the government. So
All right.
I don't ever want anybody telling me what to do, including the government. But I don't trust them, and I never really. I grew up in a very Republican family for the most part,
Yeah.
and so I had very conservative views for most of my life, and then 2020 happened, and the pandemic happened, and everything was sort of turned upside down for me. Everybody, I suppose, but I'm talking about I started being very, very aware of what the government was doing and not doing, and I could see things differently. Did you have a similar experience during the pandemic, or do you know what I'm talking about, or not?
I felt like that way before the pandemic. I had quite a life experience. I'm not sure how many details. So I actually was very this person I spoke of earlier that was very close to
Mhm.
was a whistleblower. I'm going to be real. Was a whistleblower against one of the massive, largest corporations on earth, and
Can you tell me what industry they were in?
um, they were in
Was it like
the.
medical or?
It was medical.
Okay, okay.
It was okay. It was medical, but actually larger than that. It was a
Like
medical
like pharmaceutical or what?
medical division of basically a military industrial complex organization. I'm just going to say it that way.
Okay, very interesting. Okay.
So it's a division within the division, but it was actually the information brought to the government was not just about that division, but about the whole organization. I'm just going to speak in, not going to say any names or
Yeah, I
anything.
get it. I get it. Okay.
So I got extremely the experience I had during that period. Then it made me learn a lot. what 2008 was about, and about sort of the upper echelons of money and power in this world, and how,
Hmm.
first of all, it took away the veil for me. That's one of the reasons that's when I started to let go of this they concept, because it really showed me that these are individual beings, people, humans making choices in the context of their space that they live in. It's not a grouped. I don't really do believe there's a grouped they that have this. It's like there may be individuals within a they feeling that impose a lot of bullshit in our world, but I don't think in that space there's actually, they're all individual human beings
Oh,
who are
hold on.
making
Can I
choices.
just clarify? I just want to clarify what you're saying. Do
Yeah,
you not believe that there is a group of people that are secretly running the world or beings that are running the world? You don't believe that? Is that what you're
I
saying?
don't believe that. I don't actually know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I think that there's a tendency for humans and groups to, I don't know. I don't know. That's, I guess, where do I go with this? So I guess to go back with the government part, I'm going to go back
Yeah.
to
Okay.
the experience of just being disenfranchised, and the vision that I had, or the clarity I got around, various past financial disasters that happened in our country, and
Uh huh.
the the perceived battle between government enforcement agencies and corporate, like the largest corporations on earth, and corporations that are bigger than governments, than even the biggest
Yes.
governments
Yes.
on this earth space, and the game that's played around all that. There's a game. It's a total game. But I don't necessarily
Absolutely.
think there's a small group or a group of people who meet in a room and say, okay, well, here's how we're going to move the levers of the game to get what we want.
Okay. Do
I
you
actually
do you
think
believe that there? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think every player on every level of all these different games, I'm going to call it, even all the way up to upper echelons of corporations and government, and the bigger upper element, the ones who have I don't know, their handle on the levers of the monies that flow in this space,
Mm-hmm.
um, are all different individuals who are operating within their own life space of what they perceive as the best choices to take care of their family, their lives with their families, their what they want to do for themselves, their personal goals, their and
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't necessarily think there's a big like, well, let's let's fuck everybody up and go hide on this island, small group of people.
Gotcha. A cabal, if you will.
There we go, cabal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So you don't believe that there's a reptilian cabal that's running everything. So do you believe that there are certain families or powerful individuals that are kind of pulling the strings in terms of global affairs? Not necessarily from an evil standpoint, but just that there are a small group of people that are kind of intertwined in all world affairs. Do you think that that exists or no?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I think just by proxy of their like of, I mean, of who where they are, where they, yeah, even just by
Yeah.
proxy of their experience,
So
like royal families and like things like that. I think
that's
some
a
of that.
synchronicity. That's a synchronicity. As soon as you said royal families, I was thinking
Okay,
that in my head 10 milliseconds before you said it. That's really funny.
that's great. I
So
love it.
these royal families. So I'm assuming that you don't believe that they're reptilian of nature, correct?
Well, I think there's a reptilian mind that we all have. That's part of our,
That's okay.
absolutely, but I don't think they're necessarily in a being within a suit that is solely here to manipulate the hell out of us.
Yeah, like a reptilian from another dimension or world or whatever,
I
whatever.
think those people in those experiences truly believe that they're doing the best they can in the context of their experience. If you,
If you were told that the royal family for reals is reptilian, would that blow your mind or what?
that's funny. I don't know. I
I
think I
know, right?
would.
Like, have you thought about that? Like, what if for real? Like, I know it sounds crazy, but like, what if for real it is? You know?
Well, first I'd say show me show me the details. Show me, show me.
Yeah.
I
Well,
wouldn't believe it because someone
let's
told
assume
me.
that King's All right. Well, let's just assume that King Charles rips off his face and shows you his true reptilian form. Would that sort of shatter your view of reality?
I would probably just laugh and say, "Well, that's silly," just like I say with everything else.
And then go to therapy for the next 10 years trying to get it out of your
Well,
mind.
in therapy, I would just be like, "Well, shit. I guess I was wrong. Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm just curious.
right on.
Um,
And then I
so
also
I
would want to talk to the reptilian and ask them questions. That's I would want to engage with the reptilians and ask.
Well, you and me both. I got questions. I got
Right.
questions. Well, I often think about these royal bloodlines and why it's so important to maintain the bloodline and why there's so much incest within those families traditionally in order to keep the blood pure. And then I start marrying that concept with these ancient stories of how the gods or the watchers or the beings or whatever came down and had children with the humans and created these sort of demigods, and they were often assigned territories or regions to rule or lord over these half human half divine beings or whatever. And so I kind of wonder if that's related to the royal family, and that's why keeping the bloodline is so important. And they talk about it in like Harry Potter. That's sort of like the old rich families
Mm.
that sort of know things that most people don't know about something that's you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
What do you think? Is that absurd to you? That any of that may be actually going on?
The funny thing, no, it's not. Not at all absurd to me. I think it totally could be. It totally could be one of the versions of this experience. Because again, it's all to me. It could be another dimension, and
Yeah,
maybe that's the dimension I'm in. Maybe this is the dimension I'm not in. I don't. I will know when I know. I won't know until I know.
I know. That's what's so frustrating for me is I
Yeah.
just want to know. I just want to know.
Hmm.
I heard on some podcast somebody was talking about that, saying that I just want to know all the answers. I just want to know what's beyond the veil. And the response that they got back from God or the universe was that our human form, our human mind, is like a teacup. And all of the cosmic knowledge is like the ocean. And so it's like trying to fit all of that cosmic knowledge into a tiny little teacup. And it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I like that analogy a lot because when I get frustrated that I don't have the answers, or are aliens real, or are there interdimensional beings, or what is the nature of reality and all that stuff, part of me has to just think like, you know what, just be a teacup. You don't have to know everything. You've got what you know right now, and just don't go too crazy with it. you know
Right. What do you think about the element of just everyone has their own teacup and all these different teacups are trying to mix the teas together, but you know, I guess I'm just trying to. Where am I going with that? I have this vision, I have
I
this
think you want to
image in
have a
my
tea party
mind.
maybe.
Well, just because it's just fun. It's fun to talk about all these different possibilities. Like, are there
Yep.
reptilian brains? But I also do
Yep.
sometimes question like, is that fucking crazy? Is that freaking crazy to like? But I like the exercise, the mind bending exercises too, because I think it helps open
Yep.
up.
Yep.
But I also question like because sometimes these mind exercises don't work so well for some, where they get very attached to their version
Yeah.
of what they see, and even if what they see and experience is not and work doesn't line up with, I guess I'm kind of segueing into mental health. I'm going to be real. That's where I'm
Yeah.
segueing. So what is
Yep.
mental health? I mean, because I explore a lot of different curiosity, mind bending thoughts, ideas, things, but
Hmm.
somehow I guess I'm also very obsessed with grounding, so maybe that does help me. but
Yeah, for sure.
but I mean, the just the whole mix of it all, and under like letting go of it's wrong for someone to think this, so they must be mentally off concept.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. People, it's very easy for the human to get attached to their belief systems, and it's very hard to often see things from another perspective. Going back to Christianity, I feel like a lot of Christians that I know personally aren't willing to even think about things that go against the dogma that they have, that goes against their very strict, narrow lane of how the world operates, and they're unwilling to talk about reincarnation. They're unwilling to talk about maybe Jesus didn't exist. They're unwilling to talk about these concepts that go against their programming and belief systems.
Yeah. I guess I'm worried
So
more on the societal realm. Like there used to be more of a common. Seems like there used to be a more common baseline of what people just generally believed as a whole to have to start from on various. There's more. Is that foundation? I guess with, but now with all this mix of all our digital download, like all of our screens and that are in our face all the time, that give us all these spaces to explore so many different things all at the same time.
right,
It's
but at the same time,
it's shook in that foundation.
yeah, I'm with you. But they often create these echo chambers where you just hear what you want to hear, and you're only talking to other people that agree with you and your perspectives and your stances and viewpoints, and so it just becomes this well, a cult. Like we were talking about cults, it just becomes a cult almost of just like you only hear the one narrative. That's why I like to ask other people things like, do you think that new earth is coming or whatever? Because it's so easy. I'm like, I don't know, do I believe that, or have I just been watching a lot of YouTube videos that talk about it and now it's sort of intertwined itself in my subconscious, and like I don't know who's affecting who here, like why I believe what I actually believe anymore.
Oh yeah, which makes me segue into, I've have you observed, so some people have, on these screen scrolling spaces that I've observed, basically kind of say we're in a mix of multiple different timelines all at the same time. Like this is the first time this has happened on Earth, I see sometimes, right? Like this is the first
Right.
time this has happened. We're living in this space where there's multiple different timelines all happening at the same time, and we're just choosing which one we're gonna continue to resonate with. And then at some point, there's going to be this separation of these different timelines. Have you heard this or read this? Like, what do you feel about
Sure.
the concept?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I have heard that, and I'm like, sure, maybe. Sure.
And yeah,
That's with all of these things. I'm like, I just love to philosophize about all of them and hear different perspectives, especially if it's something I haven't heard before. I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting take on that. But
yeah,
I try to just play that game of not attaching to it because it's so easy to be like, yes, that sounds true and real to me today. So that's what I'm going to latch onto and make that my new belief system. But I'm trying to detach from everything. So I have to just sort of stay in this space of like not attaching to it. That's an interesting philosophy and letting it go. you know,
yeah. Hmm.
because then once I start attaching myself to these beliefs, like, oh no, new Earth is coming. It's the fifth dimension. We're gonna have this shift. There's going to be a solar event. Once I start latching on to a certain narrative or timeline or whatever you want to call it, um, then that becomes a part of who I am. And now I'm latched onto it. And then when it gets real deep, then I start attaching myself so hard to it that I start arguing that you're wrong if you don't believe that New Earth is coming. And if I have to start defending myself and why I believe, then it turns into this whole ego thing again. And so that's why I like to remain detached from it so that it doesn't like, I don't become worked up when somebody, um, argues with me or tells me I'm wrong. If I'm not attached to it, then what do I care if they believe I'm wrong or believe something different?
Right. But it does feel nice to be a part of communities, and sometimes being that
Yeah.
as you join, as you like resonate with certain concepts, then there are communities that build around those concepts. And I guess I'm trying to find the space where it doesn't matter what you resonate, there's that feeling of community. And I guess I question that a lot because it feels like most communities are built on a foundation of these are what you beliefs you have. These are, I don't know, we all believe this. So you're a part of this community.
Right. Like
I guess,
religions or politics or whatever.
yeah, I'm trying to find that space where you don't have to define ourselves like that, but still feel that community.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. I'm on the path, I think, of cultivating that community because I have that desire as well, and I believe in manifesting that. With it, I believe in manifesting. So I think that we can manifest these things, and I'm working on manifesting a community of like-minded people that don't necessarily all have to have the exact same beliefs, um, and we can all just have a conversation without getting all worked up about it and pointing fingers and saying, well, you're wrong here because of this, or the Bible doesn't say that, so you're wrong, or any of those things.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm feeling the energy of like having a community that's not so attaching to the community. The detachment. There's the detachment. Like,
Yeah, well, I think you got to join a Buddhist community, is what we're talking about here. I think you got to just be Buddhist.
well, even that. No, I'm a participator, so I want to participate. Like, it feels like there's this. idea that if you're a Buddhist, you don't participate, like you sit and meditate with a group of people in a room every day, and
Sure.
that's just maybe my judgment of it. Like, but that's or my perceived version of it based on what I've been told from the outside world, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you. Yeah.
But I feel the energy of needing like participating in whatever community I'm in as I am in those communities from moment to moment, whether it be like, I don't know, like hanging out at the baseball game with the other parents who have their kids playing the baseball game. And that's one community, or going
Yeah.
to work and going out for lunch and having lunch conversation with my coworkers. That's another community. And I mean, it's just, but being able to flow through those communities and find the common links between where everybody has that link.
Yes. Do you feel like in those different communities in your own life that you are the same person across the board, or do you find that you act differently around these people than around those people? I'm just curious.
I would say in the past it's been more acting differently. I'm getting better at just being, it's a process.
Totally.
I'm learning to just be myself in multiple contexts. And that's been that's a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice.
I hear you, brother. I asked because I went through the same thing where I found that I had, my church group of friends, I had my school friends, I had my family members, and I found that I was acting differently around all of them. And I was like, this, it just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel real. So that's why I was curious if you had a similar experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't mean I'm saying like in everybody's face about who I am everywhere I go. It's more
No,
just
no,
that
no, no, no.
I'm less likely to hide who I am in the context of conversation that comes up as it flows. Like, I'm more open to say, yeah, I don't really feel the politics at all, or I'm not really, whatever subject is coming up, I'm more willing to be open about my perspective as it comes up.
Okay, so when you're slightly differently around other people, do you think it's because you're maybe embarrassed of how they'll perceive you, or because you're just a private person and don't want to necessarily share your political opinions, or why do you think you hold back a little bit?
I guess to me, his who's really resonated with that hermetic concept of
Hmm.
keeping to myself. I guess there is this self-protection, self-preservation element where
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
I
okay.
feel like there's so many efforts to get in context of conversations and a lot of social conversations. There's so many efforts to bring you to the group, like instead
Right.
of well, welcome, like, once you join our community, join my community and subscribe to what I'm saying or what I
Hmm.
believe. And I'm so this well. I respect and love your beliefs, but I also, respect and love everybody else's beliefs too. And I'm not gonna.
Yeah, totally. It's so hard because I feel like just as human beings, we're just naturally programmed to want to be a part of a community. If you're ostracized from a community or exiled from your community, that's like the worst possible punishment
Yeah.
historically. So, like, I get it.
Well, I watched a couple more cult shows this last week.
Yeah, I found
Yeah,
a new one too.
I'm kind of obsessed with the whole, yeah. Why where do those communities, like, what energizes those communities to stick together even in the dark times when things even get kind of shady, and the
Yep,
shady things that people in those communities end up doing with the community that they're in
sure.
really blows my mind. I'm really fascinated by that.
Yeah, it's human nature has always been so fascinating to me, especially in terms of a cult or groups or how we or how people just want to fit in, myself included. I mean, I'm with everybody. Like, it's just in our DNA to want to fit in, because if you don't fit in, then you're out. You're kicked off the island, and you don't get to have any of the safety net that comes with that, the security that our reptilian brains are sort of like thriving for.
Oh, I know.
Do you find in your own life? Well, first of all, would you consider yourself spiritual? Is that kind of just generally?
Yeah, I mean, generally.
So as you started exploring these sort of spiritual things, have you found any not pushback, but sideways glances from anybody in your family or close friends that have been like, what's the deal with all this spiritual stuff? What are you talking about?
It's interesting because I would say no, not really. Um, no, not really. But
Yeah,
I'll be
so
real. I don't talk about it very often. That's the other part. Like
okay, that's where
I
you and
don't
I
share.
differ. Is I like to talk about I like to get like when I'm meditating, I'm letting everybody know I'm meditating. I'm talking about meditating. It's the new thing I discovered. I love talking about
Yeah,
meditating. So when I'm, and I went through a phase where I was real hippie phase and I was wearing, like bracelets of lapis lazuli and crystals and incense and all of that
yeah,
stuff. And so everybody in my family and my close circle, they all knew, okay, Matt's sort of into spiritual stuff now, I guess. So it was very
yeah.
obvious. But perhaps it wasn't as obvious for you because you just weren't talking about it.
And it's interesting because I question: Am I avoiding? Am I like? Is that from? I question: Is that a fear thing? And I guess maybe that there is an element of that there. The why I don't
Mm.
broadcast it all the time, but I also don't feel like it's necessarily helpful. If it's helpful for me to broadcast it in ways or share, then or helpful for them, maybe even I don't know, but like, is it fear that's preventing me? Is what my big question is right now, and I don't. Sometimes it is,
Mhm.
I think, and sometimes it's not. I think.
Well, yeah, it definitely was for me. And the fear was I didn't want them to judge me or make fun of me or tell me that I'm wrong and going to hell, essentially.
Oh yeah, see, I don't really have that vibe with my family. Like,
Yeah, I definitely did and do. So I think there's many people in my family that accept me for who I am and love me. I'm only talking about a few people, of course, but
yeah,
um, yeah, I definitely went through a hard period where I'm going to a family gathering this weekend, and it's like, do I? I had to like have a little pep talk for myself before I would go in and say like, don't be the spiritual weirdo. Don't go nuts talking about reincarnation or aliens. Or I definitely tried to bite my lip because I didn't want them to judge me.
mm, yeah,
And I didn't want to get made fun of or anything because it was all kind of new to me, and I wasn't really secure. I wasn't secure or confident in any of those things, and so it was a process for me of just slowly becoming myself and slowly learning to just like, you know what? I love talking about this shit, and that's okay if you don't, but I'm going to talk about it.
yeah. That's great. I really respect you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks.
There's
Um,
still spaces I think I don't share, like especially my workspace. I don't share a lot very often. This is like
yeah.
my big sharing right here, talking with you. But I don't. There's a lot of spaces I don't share much. I don't share much.
Yeah,
And
well,
but
I'm with you. For my whole life I did not share. I had a big wall up. I'm not insinuating you have a wall up, but I did. And I had this exterior that I wouldn't let anybody get past. And I pretended to be confident when I wasn't. I was pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, and it just felt fake, like I was wearing a mask the whole time. Um and it just felt that was my whole life. I was that way. I never opened up to anybody. I was never vulnerable. I would never tell people my true emotions or feelings. Like I bottled that shit up deep.
yeah, I hear that.
And so around 2017 was kind of when I started hitting my hippie phase, and I just sort of had this, it wasn't a moment, it was just kind of this slow unveiling of spirituality, and I kind of just started questioning things, and I started opening up. That's when the universe first suggested that I start a YouTube channel, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was scared out of my mind. I did not want to open up about my life at all. But the universe was saying, you gotta open up. You gotta open up. You gotta be vulnerable. You gotta talk about this stuff. And then once I started doing it, it just felt easier and I felt lighter. And I was like, okay, okay, it feels good to talk about this stuff that I've been bottling up my whole life, because I'm too embarrassed that people will judge me or whatever.
I love it. Thank you for doing so. It's so amazing.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's I was just doing it for myself. I wasn't necessarily doing it to share with anybody or honestly in the beginning I think there was nobody watching the videos, and I was okay with that because I was scared out of my mind, but it was just this, over the last several years of just me opening up slowly more and more, and I find that even now when I'm talking in platforms like this, there's always still room for blossoming and opening up even further and digging even deeper and revealing more things about myself, because it's just, I found that once I opened up and started telling people about the stuff that I was struggling with in my own life, the stuff that I was having a hard time with, or addiction, or just sort of being vulnerable, it sort of just opened up this door, and the look in people's eyes would change, and they would start sharing stuff from their own life. They felt like, okay, now I can be vulnerable around you too, because you're telling me all this shit about your life that you shouldn't maybe be sharing. But if you're going to be vulnerable, then I'll be vulnerable. And I feel like it's been fun to watch the as I become more open, that others around me tend to become more open too, and I think it's special.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I had a funny experience like a couple weeks ago when a family member said to me, "You're gonna think this is really weird, but I decided to go to see a group medium thing." And I'm like, I'm like, wait, so either you haven't been paying attention to me in my life for the last couple of years, or I'm not really sharing enough with you to share where I'm at. Because like to have anyone in my life that I is that close to me, a very close family member, say you're gonna think this is weird about a medium. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yes,
there's nothing
I hear you,
about
but
me that would think that's
right,
weird. It
right,
was
right,
fascinating that
right.
that person had that self judgment around themselves, and then I had to question my role in their own judgment, self judgment too. Like, oh wait, maybe I'm not sharing. I'm. This is maybe I could open up more in a
Yeah,
conversation,
that's
relationship.
interesting that you say that. Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's just more it's opportunities like that present themselves, that are little gifts from the universe, that's like, hey, here's another opportunity that you can open up a little bit. And sometimes I would take that opportunity, and other times I would say, nope, not today. No, thank you, I don't feel comfortable with that today, no thanks.
Yeah.
And then the universe will present that opportunity again and again and again, until it finally, it's just facing my fears of people's judgment. So it's just another opportunity to face my fear, another opportunity to open up, another opportunity to be vulnerable. So thank you, universe.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've also found that, when I become labeled as the spiritual guy in the family, or the guy that talks about weird shit, I found that people tend to open up about that stuff too, where they're more likely to talk to me about aliens or interdimensional beings, or this one time they had a supernatural experience where they think they saw a demon or Jesus Christ, or, these things that people, are kind of embarrassed to talk about and won't talk about in polite company. But I feel like, once you sort of are your true authentic self, other people tend to reflect that back.
Yeah. So true. So true.
It's like with the aliens too. I feel like a lot of people, I hear these podcasts of people interviewing people who have had these alien experiences, and they are embarrassed to talk about it because of the social stigma, or they don't want to get made fun of, or have, think it's silly or whatever. And so they just won't tell anybody. But once you open up and say, hey, I've had an experience, then it opens the door for them to too say, oh, well, now that you're talking about it, I actually had an experience too. And so I think that's very interesting.
I get really excited about. I think that part of that's also generational because I really excited about the younger generations. That I,
Right.
as a what I consider myself an older man. I'm old,
Sure.
only well, not that old, but like I started doing like what I called emotional work like in my 20s, which was in early 2000s, right?
Mm.
So early 2000s or late 90s, and like it was a secret. Like it was interesting this concept of me doing this work that I considered really important to myself. I really there was this, and this is kind of a hermeticism concept, right? The secret element, from what I
Yes.
remember in the Kabbalion. I've only
Mm-hmm.
gotten like an hour and a half into it so far, but
Yep.
there was that secret element to it, which is fascinating to me. That I feel like there is. We are. This is something I feel like is happening. We're ushering into this space where the secrecy is no more. Like it's just time to let the secrets no more. It's they're not serving us any right. It's not helpful. Like, but it was
Yes.
helpful for me in those 20s to early 2000s to have that secret element because I did need that safe space to do the emotional work I was doing.
Right.
And I had
So
a
do
community even that I was working with a little bit that was helpful in that space. But I feel like these younger generations don't have that need to keep these things secret as much, which is nice.
And by these things being kept secret, do you mean like the sort of ancient knowledge, these
Yeah.
techniques and stuff
Yeah.
that the secret societies and stuff maybe we're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Like the ancient knowledge,
Right.
the information that we call secret information, but it's actually been out in the open for a long time. We just weren't looking at it.
Exactly. I think that part of that is that you're what is the saying that the knowledge presents itself when the student is ready. You know,
Yeah.
so I feel
Amen.
like until you are ready, until you've woken up or whatever you want to call it, then you're just not going to see it. Like several years ago, there's no. If you had shown me the Kybalion, I'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude?" Like, I'm not
Right.
Hermeticism. Like, I'm not interested in that weird shit at all.
Interesting.
And so it might interest me in passing. I'd be like, "Well, that's a cool philosophy," but I wouldn't have dove deep at all. It wouldn't have resonated with me at all. And but when I was ready, it came, and it just was like, "Holy cow!"
Nice. Beautiful.
And so that's how I feel about this secret ancient knowledge. I don't think it's necessarily being kept. Well, I mean, it was being kept a secret. It was behind closed doors, but it was only for people who are ready to pursue that type of knowledge. Like when you're ready, you know you're ready, and you have a thirst for that knowledge, for a thirst to dig deeper, whether it's looking into the ancient pyramids or the ancient scriptures or the Bible or whatever is resonating with you to dive deeper into something that you haven't dove deeper before.
Right. So, what's the difference between gatekeeping and not sharing stuff with someone because they may not be ready for it?
Well, that's interesting. I think it is distinct. I think that, like like in ancient Greece, for example, they had these secret societies and cults and stuff like Socrates and Plato, and that was only for people who were ready. I think that when you are ready, you approach the temple and you are let in, and I think that um, you are ready for that sort of thing. And I think that the difference between that and gatekeep, because I think that that's not necessarily gatekeeping. I think that if anybody had gone, if Joe Schmo had gone up to Plato and said like, "Hey, tell me about Hermetic philosophies," that conversation just would never happen because if you're it's not casual conversation. It's not you're either ready for it or you're not. So I think that it's a vibrational thing. And I think that's different than gatekeeping. Like gatekeeping, for example, the United States government gatekeeping extraterrestrial knowledge or UAPs or whatever. I do not like that gatekeeping because I feel like they're keeping it from me intentionally for reasons of power and control and manipulation. And they're not necessarily keeping it because I'm not ready for it. I think that I'm the one to judge whether or not I'm ready for that information. Some people aren't ready to hear about aliens. Some people aren't ready to hear about some of these crazy things that the government is doing or not doing or conspiracies or whatever. Some people just aren't ready to hear that. They just sort of put their fingers in their ears and they're like, nope, that's too wacky for me. But there's so many people on this planet that are ready for that information and it's intentionally being withheld by the government for power and control. That's the difference for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
That's
it makes me real frustrated that that information is being withheld. And these well, I don't want to go off on a rant, but I just feel like we are in a time where a lot of these secrets are dissolving. I feel like the old school way of doing things, the old boys club and the government that these secret societies and skull and bones and all that. I feel like that
Mhm.
is sort of dissolving away, and we're coming into a time of transparency. um Apocalypse just means revealing, a big revealing. It doesn't mean end of the world. It doesn't mean doomsday. Apocalypse just translates to a revealing. And so if the curtain is revealed, if we suddenly see things for how they truly are, that's what I think is happening. Is we're starting to awaken to what's been happening before our very eyes this whole time. You know?
Yeah. I'm really fixated on your term time of transparency. I love that.
Yeah. Would you agree that we're in a time of transparency, or
Oh,
getting there at
absolutely. And I
least?
think honestly, our internets and stuff is one of the spaces that's kind of shown that in a lot of ways. And the honestly, the arguments around what to do with the internets. Do we have filters around things that we allow people to see? And this we is an I don't know. an abstract. It's an abstract.
Yeah, sure.
But or do we just let all information flow as it flows? And even if people get caught in information that may put them down bunny holes that are possibly self-destructive to them, let that just go as it goes. And who are we to
Right.
say what's going to be destructive or destructive or not destructive to people?
Right. I
So,
want to decide that for my own life. I want the freedom in my
right.
own life to decide if this is destructive. I want the freedom to be extreme, to shoot up heroin, for example. If I want to do it, I want to do it. I don't want anybody to, and
Right.
as long as I'm not harming anybody else or intentionally hurting somebody as a byproduct of my actions, I want to be able to be free to do whatever the heck I want to do.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a very complicated space to be in, though. I'll say it's interesting because I want the freedom as well, and I want others to have that freedom. But I also understand that how it can be so the discernment. It's like it's a tough walk. The discernment as a human
Yes,
being.
I'm aware, but I kind of have a cold attitude towards it. Like if you're not
Cold. There's that word again.
frigid,
Not,
it's just kind of
yeah.
a cold attitude that like if you don't have the discernment, then like good luck, good luck to you. I feel like I don't think it's correct. Part of me would love to have the internet just go away. Like I don't. I think it's um, the the bad outweighs the good in many ways, in my opinion. But I'd love to just get rid of it altogether. But also, um, that's like saying I have a problem with alcohol, so I wish that we would just get rid of all alcohol or ban all alcohol. That doesn't make any sense. Like deal with your addiction issues. So when I say I want to get rid of the internet, it's because I'm addicted to myself, my smartphone and Instagram, and I would just love for somebody to shut off the internet so I didn't have to deal with those addictions. But at the same time, like um, I should be able to deal with that on my own, and have the
Right.
freedom to look at Instagram if I want to. And it's hard. I dealt with this a lot during the 2020 pandemic, and there was a lot of, I had never thought about personally issues of censorship. I had never given it any thought, honestly. But I got on a real political soapbox for a while, and I was making real political YouTube videos about COVID and masks, and I had real strong opinions about all of it. And so YouTube would often block my videos or, um, you know, uh, uh, what am I trying to say?
Just
Not let
shadow
me not
banning.
let me post for 30 days or whatever. Yeah, so that sort of stuff. Censorship really started to bother me on a real core level that it hadn't before, and I just think that we should all be free to say whatever we want as long as we're not harming anybody. But of course, a private company like Instagram or Google or YouTube, of course, they have the right to make up whatever rules they want. I just don't like them.
Right.
Do you have an opinion on censorship? Are you pro censorship?
No, actually, I really think I'm. Yeah, I'm no. I'm not pro censorship. I really would like. I I really think it's just a practice of our own personal sovereignty and responsibility around that sovereignty and choice to
Yeah,
choose the information that we browse and what we do with the information, and also to cross-reference the information that we look at, to look at multiple perspectives, versions, ideas around various subjects we're exploring. It's kind of a large responsibility that I honestly probably don't even follow through enough with myself as I think about it. But
it's very
I
overwhelming.
I think that it's I think it should be open. All this communication should be open as just total open format. I do.
Where I agree with you. Where's the line for you? Is Do you think that there's something that shouldn't be talked about in an open forum like Twitter, for example?
Hmm. Honestly, no. I think we should talk about it all
Yeah,
because I think the more we talk about it, there's so much power. I mean, in speaking all these different words, how we use these words, and the different truths and the different perspectives on what we. I mean, it's just there's so much. Oh, it's pretty empowering to follow that.
yeah. Yeah, we live in an interesting time where we have access to all of this knowledge and information that we never had in history before, theoretically. Um, and so it's really interesting. Yeah, I try to teach my kids too that to just question everything. Just because your teacher tells you something, or the president says something, or a doctor tells you something, it doesn't mean that it's a fact. It means that that's their perspective, that's their opinion, and there might be other opinions out there. And it's up to you to decide what your opinion is on the matter, and to essentially question everything, including what your father tells you. Like, don't just take what I say at face value. Question me, like because I'm not infallible. I'm not always right, and I'm just a human, and I'm just telling you my Matt Owens perspective. And so I think it's healthy. I used to get really worked up about what the teachers and the public school system were teaching my children, and I got real angry and triggered by it. And I had to work through that, and I came to a place now where I'm at peace with whatever the teachers are teaching them, because that's just opening my children up to another perspective. It doesn't mean that your teacher is wrong or your teacher is right. It just means, like, now you get to see another perspective, and let's talk about it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's healthy, and I think we're kind of heading that way as a society. Slowly, I can kind of see it slowly happening. I'd like it to happen overnight, of course, but I don't think it will. But I think people are becoming more and more open to just listening again, like you do. Just sit back and listen, and not to have judgment, and not to feel like it has to become a debate, or I gotta prove him wrong, or I got all these facts and figures that are gonna shut him down. Like, why does it have to be that way?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's such an interesting mix.
It is interesting, yeah. I kind of
So,
part of me, I feel overwhelmed with all of the information we have today, and the 24-hour news cycle and social media. And we're just sort of, it's like a fire hydrant, a fire hose blasting us with this information at all times. And so part of me wants to go back to the good old days when we just lived in little smaller communities, like the ancients did.
yeah,
Um, but I
I
don't
think it
know.
also like the open format of communication and access to in what we consider, I don't know, information or not information, depending on
Yeah.
your perspective of it.
Yeah.
It also helps agitate the. I really like this alchemy idea around. There's this agitation that helps the actual process of whatever alchemy, chemistry is happening, whatever reaction happens between various different elements. So I'm not speak. I'm not a. I don't know the scientific language to speak it well enough there, but
I get
that
it.
agitation factor. There seems to be an ingredient in most of these chemical processes or chemistry or biology or alchemy that we talk
Yep.
about a lot, where there is that agitation factor in that. This open format of communication, I think, helps that agitation happen because it helps the communication of people to see, like, well, oh my God, there's you think what? You feel what? I don't. What do I think? What do I feel? What? What? And we're constantly having to redo this, recalibrate. But
Hmm.
the engagement around all of that is so extremely helpful on clarity. I don't know. I really feel like it helps the clarity. Is the perceived too much info helps get to the clarity by you got to. It feels like that the process of what siphoning through or mixing those chemicals together really helps bring that clarity for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's a good thing that we're going through this time. I hear agitation. I hear you describing. I'm with you. I follow what you're saying, but I would
Yeah.
even use the word chaos. It's sort of a chaotic time where everything is sort of being shaken up. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I kind of like that. That it is sort of something that has to happen naturally as a part of the process, but also yeah, it is good because then you're exposed to everything else. It's a good shakeup.
Well, that word chaos is interesting because the chaos oftentimes has this is from what the algorithms have told me. This is how I say it. From what the algorithms have told me, chaos is oftentimes of more of a feminine energy, which is also more of a creative energy, which helps the creation. And, if the feminine energy is the origins of birth and creation.
Yeah.
So I do feel like there is that we're stepping towards, I do feel like we are in this time of the masculine energies are the balance I'm always looking for. I do feel like the teeter totter or whatever of the balance here, we're more in the masculine right now in this phase of life and the world that we're in. And that part of that shifting is opening up these spaces that feel like chaos are actually activating the creativity and the feminine energy that we need to get to help this balance reach level out in this living space we're in.
See, that's a very interesting perspective that I have not heard before. I like it, and I might agree with you too that I think we are rebalancing towards a more feminine. Yeah, it's sort of interesting to watch it unfold.
Even just the different ways to be creative. I mean, when I was young, to be like a musician or a painter or an artist or whatever, there was like you to even do the act of being a musician or being an artist was confined in so many small little containers, and that space has expanded in the ways to create. I mean, I can I used to have to try and find the recording gear I needed to find to in order to record something. And it would be like I'd go to the music store and whatever and figure out my budget, then buy the equipment and then plug in the equipment in the right way and get all the whatever.
Right.
Now I can just go to a website and download a freeware thing, go you plug a little USB thing into my computer, and then I have a microphone that records onto my computer just like that. And I didn't really, it's just instant, basically.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so
And
great
even the
to play
same
the
thing with
music.
art. I mean, there's so many different ways you can get like all these Etsy's and all these different ways you can get art out there that you're creating. And it's just there's the container is getting larger and larger. We're not as contained in little pockets. And I love that part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it makes me think immediately of artificial intelligence and the art that AI is creating. Do you think that humanity will still um, feel the need to express themselves artistically as much with AI taking over a large part of the art space? Have you thought about that?
That's a really good question. I
I know.
never
I
thought
wonder
of
as a
that
species
before.
if we're still going because the AI art I played around with it and it's fantastic and just beyond amazing, and this is just the first steps. Like we're just beginning to see what it's capable of, and so I wonder how it's going to affect human beings' creativity.
I do feel like it may. I think the element of humans wanting to connect with other humans is always still going to be there. Where I feel
Mm,
like, in one of the ways that us humans do connect with each other is expressing our creative selves with each other, however we do choose to do that. And I feel like the deeper we go into AI generated creativity, and that stuff is out there more, that I feel like there's going to be a I feel like there might be pockets of humans that really are still like feeling that want need to connect with the human more. So art, music created by humans, I think actually will go up in value. In my, I've been told by multiple people that they think I'm full of shit, but I really do believe this.
what do they know?
I believe that the value of because it feels like that creative element doesn't has always struggled to have to have value or to the value has always been kind of managed with a group of managers that manage your creative expression that create the value that people buy into. It seems
Sure.
to be the history of a lot of our the music recording industries with producers, labels, all that stuff. There was a huge, I mean, an artist before they actually got their art out, the musician got their music into the, call it, the public view. I mean, there's like a whole crew of people that are putting that together and putting that machine together to get it out to the people.
Right.
And that now that that machine is not needed as much, it can just be some people that are inspired and then post some videos on the internet and then get attention because it's just the energy is drawing attention to them. There's the
Right.
freedom,
Freedom.
right?
Well,
Freedom.
well, what I'm, well, I was going to say concerned about. It's not a concern, but I'm just curious because the music industry is an industry. Therefore, they are literally in it for money. They're a corporation,
Yes.
and so as AI becomes more sophisticated and they can create 20 pop songs that they know for a fact are going to be a hit based on the algorithms and what the AI has told them based on consumer consumption of songs, then they will no longer have a need theoretically for the humans to create the music and all the cost that goes along with setting up studio space, paying a band, all of the equipment, whatever,
Right.
marketing, all of that. But if they can just have an AI system create a new album with the push of a button instantaneously, create 8 songs that are incredibly popular, then it might eliminate the need for humans, you know?
Right. That's a good point.
And so I wonder if the human will be able to detect on a emotional vibrational level that this is AI created. Like, am I able to look at a beautiful piece of art that brings me to tears if an AI created it? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, my question leads to then, if that beautiful piece of art that was created by an AI gives you an emotional reaction and brings you to tears, does that lessen the value of that emotional reaction? I don't feel like it does. I feel like whatever emotional experience we have is perfect as we feel it, regardless of what triggered that emotional experience.
Yeah,
So I
I'm
have
with you.
forgiveness for AI in that way, but I still have this I'm attached to wanting humans to still want to create. So I feel like hopefully I just feel like there's an empowerment that comes with creation, like practicing creating by even every time I hear someone say I'm not a creative person, I mean that's it, I always just kind of twist the knife in my soul a little bit, like bullshit. Everyone's creative. We are creating everything about our life. So
Agreed.
it's a compare energy that's being put on the idea of creativity. Well, I'm not as creative because I'm comparing my. It's a competing slash comparing energy that I would like people to relieve themselves if possible because I think it's found it very helpful for me to try to
Yep.
let go of those comparisons, competing energies. That
Yep.
to say they're not creative is a false belief, a programming that I hope they can shift. And if they, I maybe have to let go of whether they shift or not, but it is perfect as it is. But
Yes, I applaud what you're saying. I totally agree. And I used to teach. I had a little side hustle where I was teaching people to do art. I do little workshop classes and teach just little 2 hours on the weekend or whatever.
yeah.
And so many of those people were like, "Oh, I'm not very creative. I'm so bad at this." And I would always say exactly what you're saying, like, "Oh, I disagree. I think that you just haven't found the right medium yet, or you haven't found something that you're good at yet, or it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be a Michelangelo, and you don't have to be a painter to be creative. You can also make music or make, these chefs are creating this beautiful art in kitchens or gardening and creating these beautiful gardens. That's all acts of creation, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Amen to that. Which
So, yeah,
segues me into an idea around the difference between work and play because I feel like creativity has a lot of play energy in it,
yeah,
and I feel like we've been programmed that work is what gets you to where you want to go. Work is going to get you there. You just got to work on it. You got to work,
right.
work, work. And I'm realizing I've had this sort of a lot of synchronicities recently,
Yep.
really bringing up the subject of play for me.
Mm.
And I was first of all, I had the what the hell is play? I don't know. I'm 47, single father, trying to just keep the days
Just get
keep
through
a
the
roof
day.
over just get through the day. Yeah, keep a roof
Yes.
over our head, keep the food on the table, like just keep my son engaged in his community activities. Keep and
Yep.
I think I'm realizing that I keep on having this belief that for me to play means I need to just shut all that down and go somewhere else to play. And I'm trying to figure out how to integrate the energy of play in all these spaces that I currently feel are work. Like
Mm.
even in like what I feel like I'm like at one point in my path of the last year was, well, how do I want to, there's this energy of once you awaken, you want to put yourself into service and that service is working for others to help them on their path. And I'm like, well, for me, I've kind of reached this place of what is service too? Like is service that's the other thing. My mind goes in so many different directions because like all these cult communities, I noticed that in these the leader, the guru is asking them to do service. Here's what we're going to do for service. So there is this concept of service does feel important, but does that service need to feel like work? And why does it feel to me like I feel like to do service is work? why can't it be fun? And I'm trying to find that place. And I'm realizing I guess I'm going through a deprogramming, I think, around what work and play are,
Yeah.
and experiencing the polarity between those different words and trying to find that balance point where, like, if I'm going to go into service, it just feels like too much. It feels like work to even do music. Like, I love playing and writing music. I love painting. Like, even doing these things that I feel like could be helpful to others if I shared them. As soon as I put the concept of I'm going to do them to help others in service, it feels like work, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
less motivated to do it.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm with you. I've gone through a very similar thing. Like I'm just nodding my head as you're talking, like, yep, yep, I get it. I get it.
But I think the energy of, if I can figure out that I'm walking this right now, if I can find that energy of play, it's also going to be more exciting to others to experience their version of what they're experiencing with what I share
Yeah. And it'll feel like for
myself.
myself, it'll just feel more natural. It won't feel as
Yeah,
forced. Like,
man.
oh, I gotta help humanity. I gotta
Right?
and it goes into that light worker mode again, or like tip of the spear. We're here to save
Right.
humanity. Like that's stressful.
Yeah, like my brain went to this whole, like, remember, like, back in the day when we had CDs or albums or tapes that were released, the first
Yes.
album was always like, wow, this band, their first album, it's so amazing. How often was it they do that second release and you're like, well, this second release kind of sucks. It's not good. Like,
Right.
maybe there's like one song I like, but that
Right.
first album they put out there, that first album where they weren't trying to do the work to put the creative thing out there. They
Right.
just had this album that they were excited about. They wanted to record it and share it with people.
Yep.
Those first albums from so many bands were always the ones that I'm like, oh man, that's the one.
Yeah, where you can just sort of feel that they were in the flow when they were
Yeah.
making every song or whatever, you know?
Yeah, they were playing. I feel like they were
Right,
playing.
right, right. I'm like you in that I felt the same way, and it felt a little daunting almost. Like, ugh, I feel like I need to help humanity. Or what does that mean? What does that look like? And
Right.
I tried many different avenues to just poke around and see what felt right. And I thought like, okay, maybe I'm meant to do like, I thought for a minute, like maybe I want to get into like life coaching. So I started sort of going down that path and it just felt, I was going to say gross, but it just felt wrong. It didn't feel like me. It felt forced. I tried to set up like one-on-one consultations with people and set up calls and we can work through your stuff like a therapy type thing. And it just never connected. So then I tried a different thing and a different thing. And finally, I kind of landed in doing podcasts. And this is sort of it feels like the sweet spot when I'm done
Nice.
recording these things. I just feel like on cloud nine. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing, and I feel like people are getting something out of it, and it doesn't feel forced. So I just feel like maybe I'm encouraging you to just keep pushing. I know that you were trying out. You just recently tried out your YouTube video where you were doing like a guided meditation. And how did that feel to you? Did
Yeah.
that feel like you were in the zone? Did it feel forced? How did it feel?
Oh, to be real, I love every step of that. Like, even when I'm doing my, like, first I do the recording, the audio recording, and then I have to put it together into a little slideshow maybe or whatever on for a YouTube video. And I love every step of that process, to be honest. And it's exciting. I always enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the more I listen to it over and over again, the more, and I feel like I'm processing the energy of the meditation as I'm putting it together. I'm trying to intentionally put out the energy that this will be helpful for others as they listen to it. And there's that whole feeling and process really does energize me. And it's the kind of thing where I can, when I start working on that kind of stuff, I can work till like 1 a.m. and not even think twice about it, and then go to work, wake up and work, go to work the next day. And it's almost like I'm in my 20s again.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Like, but not saying sleep is still important. It's very important to sleep. And if I do that too many nights in a row, then it's not good too many nights in a row. But
Totally.
occasionally, if I'm in that inspired mode, then yeah, it doesn't. I just, yeah, I flow with it and it's fun and I love it. Yeah, I've been loving doing
Yeah.
those. I want to do more of those for sure.
Yeah,
I
I feel like
love.
that's how you know you're in the groove and that's how you know you're
Yeah,
heading, and it's not like that's the destination. It's just like you know you're in the right direction when it just feels so good.
and I just, a big thing I love about it. Speaking of service, is I love sharing that energy of the space of stillness and, like, opening this, trying to provide a help a space that helps people reach that stillness space that has been helpful to me, but also, like, just no rush. I mean, there's no rush concept. Like, just be there and enjoy it. And just, I'm trying to, like, I just love that energy, and that's why I love doing those videos, those meditation
Yeah.
videos.
Well, it's super healthy mentally, of course, but it's also so useful, especially this day and age when everybody, I would say most people don't slow down. They don't take a breath. They don't put their phone down. They're just constantly, and I'm putting myself in that camp oftentimes too. It's just like go, 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 go. And so it's good to have reminders like your videos or like meditation videos like that that help to remind you like, hey, take a breath. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be go, go, go all the time.
right. I've been
Yeah.
resisting this energy around that where all of them are like 3 minutes long right now.
Hmm.
And I've gotten feedback that you should narrow those down to 5 minutes. But I'm very resistant to the, I really am maybe almost cling too hard to the no rush energy. Like,
Hmm.
so I feel like we're really herded into, well, just let's figure out a way to do it faster, do it faster, do it faster. And I'm just, well, sort of part of me is like, well, I'm tired of always trying to do things faster. I don't think it's actually helpful to keep doing things faster.
I
I'm
agree.
definitely
I
the
agree.
tortoise in the tortoise and the hare story. I am the tortoise, and but I'm the tortoise who doesn't even like. I'm not even in a race. I don't feel like I'm in a race. I don't perceive myself as racing anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm a
Well,
very non-competitive person. I'm not
yeah.
competitive.
Well, you definitely give off that vibe. It's obvious to me. Yes.
So I'm like, well, I know that I'm kind of debating that. And I'm like, I know it would be helpful to narrow some of those down to 5 minutes. I don't, I'm not really feeling that. And maybe at some point I'll change my mind on that and we'll do some 5 minute versions. But
Well, I have to say, I applaud you. I kudos to you because it's so difficult to not be swayed by because everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's going to tell you your videos are too long or too short or not this and not that. And so, good for you for just saying, nah, nah. I'm going to do my own thing. Thank you, though, because I definitely did not do that. I definitely in the beginning was like, well, I want people to like me. I want people to care about what I'm doing. I want to get a big audience. I want a lot of followers. I want to, play the game. And I had to learn to let all that go. And it was a process and it was very difficult for me. So it's refreshing to hear that doesn't sway you as much as it did me, at least.
yeah, well, I think there's a balance too there too, because there is a balance of we need to work within the reality of the algorithms that we exist in. So
Yeah.
it is like I was thinking about this. We were talking over the last week around the go flip phone and ditch the screens or not, right?
I know. I'm
And that
tempted.
draw to wanting to go to the flip phone. And I was literally thinking, well, but there is also this element of these darn screens are, like it or not, they're tools. And they're tools that that actually help me as well as learning to use these tools, hopefully in healthier ways, help others too.
Sure, sure. I
So,
hear
like, I'm
you, but
not ready to just, it's kind of like, is going to a flip phone the same concept as saying, screw all of the society and going into the woods and meditating for the rest of my life in the mountains and say, you know, go to Mount Shasta and meditate in the woods for the rest of my life and say, screw the rest of society? That doesn't really feel, that just almost feels like what a flip phone would be to me right now.
I hear you. You're making me think about it now too, because yeah, I hear you. I don't think there's any balance in becoming, the lone guy in the woods. Um, so it is about balance, but is there a way? I'm asking myself this: is there a way that I can still interact with people within this community, and in a meaningful way to me without my smartphone? Like
Yeah.
how did people interact with each other 20 years ago or 30 years ago even? Like, like it's absurd to think that I can't make a meaningful connection with somebody because I don't have Instagram. Like that's kind of silly that I've gotten myself to that place.
Yeah. Well, I was interacting with people 30 years ago and it was pretty awesome. It was pretty
I know, and you didn't have Instagram, did you? So it's like
I
I
loved
I
it.
asked myself that too. Like could I thrive without my smartphone? And I think the answer is yes. I know the
Yeah.
answer is yes.
Oh, I totally could, but I feel like I'm consciously still going to make the choice around keeping it for now
I hear you, and I
because of the
I
tool
get
factor.
it. I know. There's frustration in my voice because I just like I want to go off the deep end and just go on team flip phone, but at the same time, like I don't know. I still have my podcast. I can still talk to people on the podcast if I had a flip phone. Like I could. I don't know how much good comes out of having Instagram in my life. I mean, yes, I enjoy scrolling, I enjoy posting memes, but I don't have a ton of interaction with people on there. Honestly, I mean,
Right.
it's not like that's my only outlet to interact with humanity. So, if it were deleted tomorrow permanently, my life would pretty much be unaltered. And so that says a lot. Like, well, if that's the case, then why am I doing it?
That's such a good point. Right.
So I don't know. I think about it
Well,
often, to be honest with you. I'm constantly checking in with myself.
I think it'd be a fun experiment to try, maybe and just try a week or a month, go to a flip phone, and then come back to see what it feels like to come back, and maybe occasionally try it.
Well, I know exactly how it'd feel. It'd feel amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Well,
gone without it.
I could feel you because even the moments like I did like take a walk 2 days ago without my phones. Like
Right.
didn't even take my phones at all. I didn't want to know what time it was when I was walking. I didn't even want to take pictures of really cool, amazing nature that I saw while I was walking. Even though as I was walking, I was thinking, God, I would love to take a picture of this.
I know.
You
But then
know,
I'm with you. I do the same thing.
like it's
But
funny the missing of the device as I walk away from the device.
or you think
Because
like, oh, if there's an emergency, I need to have my phone on me. Or what if somebody has to get a hold of me? Or yeah, what if?
well, yeah,
What
that's
if?
huge, especially like as a parent. Well, it's
I
funny, like as a
know.
parent, I'm thinking, well, my parent is out of town with family right now. So, like, yeah, what if something happens to my son and I'm not home for that phone call or don't have the phone with me to get the phone call or the text. But then I'm also thinking, well, 30 years ago,
Exactly.
like I would run the neighborhood for hours all day with no contact with parents or anything. And
Yeah.
it, I don't know. I even had once had an accident. I fell on my bike and hurt my knee and whatever. Whatever, I was fine. Everything worked
Yeah.
out okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know that's all, but we have to remind ourselves these things because yes, of course that's true. All of that's true. Yes.
but at the schools, like, there's an interesting story I heard from someone who works at a school district that finally put down the complete lockdown on phones and was
Oh.
saying you have to have phones completely either locked away in your locker. Different schools are doing this more and more.
Yep.
And so that there was pushback from the parents that even the parents were like, well, what if we need to get a hold of our children? And it was kind of funny to me because I was like, well, okay, there's other ways to get a hold. You
Right.
can
Right.
call the
It's absurd.
office.
I've seen similar studies where they've taken the phones away, and it's very interesting that the teenagers will start actually talking to each other again
Right.
and asking questions about each other's lives and getting to know other human beings in a way that they had not before.
Right. Wow. I can't
So
even imagine.
I think it's very interesting that we have convinced ourselves that we can't live without this technology, but of course we can, and we have for all of civilization. Um, so I don't know. I'm curious if we're going to go if we keep heading in this direction, what that's going to mean for us as a species. I'm kind of like, ooh.
What do you think about? I mean, what do you think will happen if the grid goes down, or when the grid goes down, or when or if is dependent on who you are.
I
If it
think there's
does.
going to, yeah, no, I'll say when because it is
Okay.
only a matter of time. That's just from a pragmatic, practical. This is the way that the world works. The grid's going
Yeah.
down at some
True.
point.
Right.
It's just
That's
going
true.
down.
I
We've
hear
been
you.
very lucky in this country that it hasn't gone down on a massive scale yet, but in other countries across the world, it happens all the time.
Right.
It happens all the
True.
time.
Yeah.
So anyway, if it does go down, I think it'd be a good thing for us. I think there would be massive chaos for a period where people would sort of freak out for obvious reasons, and the whole banking system would go down, and perhaps the government would go down. Like if we lose power for more than a couple of weeks, it's going to be massive social upheaval for a period.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's mostly in the major cities. And if you don't live in a major city, I think that humanity is very good at readjusting. We're very good at readjusting to things. So I think that if we had to go back to a time when the internet didn't exist, we would make do. There would be a transitional period that would be difficult for us, but ultimately, I think it'd be I think it'd be a good thing.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm even imagine. I decided to kind of close my eyes and imagine that scenario. And as you say the word chaos, like I feel what you're saying there, but I'm like closing my eyes, imagining that. But I also feel like this. energy of humans really stepping up and helping each other, like people who don't usually wouldn't
Totally.
help each other. Like we like to believe, well, it's just going to be a lot of riots and burning down buildings and robberies, and but I also feel this energy of communities of people. Like when I say true communities, I'm not discounting communities that are on the internet, but I'm talking about real, like the community in our proximity communities
IRL.
coming together and really helping each other, like neighbors really truly helping each other. I think
Yeah.
happen.
Well, thanks for pointing that out because yeah, that does need to be said. And I do agree with you that I think it might be a good opportunity for us to just come together again. I think that would happen, definitely, to
Yeah.
help others out. I feel like there's a lot in the prepper community, Um, I just think, yeah, I think people would help each other out.
Like I refuse to live in fear that it might happen. I'm not going to do that, and I'm not. I'm with you. I think I heard in one of your earlier episodes that you're not really a prepper because you think that kind of that activates the energy of fear around
I
what might
was for a
happen.
minute. I was for a minute, definitely. And then I had to really evaluate that, and it was based in fear, so I had to let it go. But yes, I
Mm.
definitely went into prepper mode for about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was scared out of my mind. That's why.
Yeah.
It was all just in fear. But once I realized that, look, I believe there's a divine being or the mechanisms of the universe or whatever that is constantly there to help me out and guide me and lead me, and that I'm always taking that my base needs and my family's base needs are always taken care of one way or the other, then that sort of releases the fear for me, where it's like, okay, something out there is looking out for me. So whether or not I have a year's worth of canned beans stocked up or not, I'm still going to be taken care of.
Yeah. I feel that. Oh man.
So yeah, I'm just aware of the time. I think you have to go soon. So
Yeah. Actually, I do need to roll kind of soon.
yeah,
It's true.
I was just looking at the clock, like, oh,
Yep. Yep.
well,
But it's been
shoot,
yeah.
I really enjoy these conversations so much, and I'm so
Yeah. Me
thankful
too.
for you.
Yeah. Very
Um,
thankful for you too, and I really love our conversations as well. Thank you.
Yeah,
They're fun.
thanks. I just feel like I'm being pushed by the universe to be doing more of these conversations with people. And I asked the universe to just sort of deliver to me whoever I meant to talk to. And then you sort of popped onto my radar. And here we are on our third episode. I reached out to several other people that I thought that I just know personally or on Instagram. And every single person has politely declined. And so I'm just sort of at this place now where I'm just waiting for the universe to just show me what's next. And so I'm just enjoying where we're at now, and I'm enjoying having these talks with you.
Yeah.
I enjoy our
Good.
talks.
Yeah. Me too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So until next time, hope you have
Yeah.
a great
Absolutely.
afternoon.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.